Was on last Monday morning, and the day been calm and fine. To the Harbour Grace excursion with the boys to have a time. And just before the sailor took the gangway from the pier, I saw some fella haul me wife on board of the Volunteer. Come on. Oh me, oh my, well, I heard me old one cry. Oh me, oh my, I think I'm gonna die. And then I heard me old one say, I wish I'd never taken this excursion around the bay. We had full 300 souls aboard. Oh, what a splendid sight. Matt strong and regimental to make our spirits bright, and myself being in the double. For the funny things they'd say, they'd choke themselves from laughing when they'd see us in the bay. Come on, oh me, oh my, I heard me old one cry. Oh me, oh my, I think I'm gonna die. Oh me, oh my, I heard me old one say, I wish I'd never taken this excursion around the bay.
So thanks for coming out on this Monday night. And you heard the introduction. Some of you might know, if you're sports fans, you probably know a little bit of the kind of stuff I do, and you were asking, why am I here? Because this isn't a sports book. But yeah, I in another life, I'm a sometime Newfoundlander, and I am the artistic director of a little festival called Writers at Woody Point, which is entering its 15th year this year. And I started out in life writing about music because I was a failed musician. So there's a bunch of good reasons why I'm here tonight, but primarily because it is my great pleasure to introduce my friend, the author of, make sure I get it right, A Newfoundlander in Canada. The new record, the Alan Doyle Band new record just came out last week, A Week at the Warehouse, right? Produced by Bob Rock. I didn't know that. That's pretty cool. I had a minor role in the process that's resulted in this book. It was one of the best afternoons I've spent in a long time listening to Alan Doyle tell stories. That's what we're going to get to do tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the voice of Great Big Sea, the Alan Doyle Band, my friend, Alan Doyle.
Hello. Thanks for coming, everybody. Thank you. What a crowd. Nice to see.
You've never used one of these on stage, have you?
In my biz, we call these still, and probably this is dating myself a bit, this is what we call a Madonna microphone. So you're flaring the Madonna mic. So I will be doing several Madonna numbers. Holiday. Celebrate. It'd be pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, this is not bad. Yeah. Okay.
Thanks everybody for coming. Thank you so much. What a great crowd. And this is the first one. Like, the last time I put out a book, the first one was at your festival. And
That's true.
That was my first night talking about the book. And tonight is my first time talking about this one, and it's sold out to the doors, and the books are sold out. Jesus, we should have had a bar. Could have made a few dollars.
You could have made a few dollars. That's promotional logic there, right? You always make your money on the bar. Yeah.
It's impossible to be a musician for a living and not come to something like this and instantly go, Jesus Christ, I should have brought a guitar. I could have. Everything about my young pub life tells me I could make $500 here. Definitely. A few Stan Rogers songs. Definitely. Anyway, so thank you all very much. And a round of applause for Stephen, who agreed to do this.
So, Alan, when last we saw you as an author, when we last read, you were the boy on the bridge, you were in Petty Harbor, you just actually had left for the big city of St. John's, right?
Yeah.
So you had left your hometown. Tell me there are a lot of ways you could have gone with the second book. You know, it could have been a Great Big Sea book. It could have been all kinds of different things. Why this book? Why this theme?
When I started writing the follow-up to the first book, I started writing about Great Big Sea in the earliest years of me living in St. John's. And eventually and very quickly, we got to the first time Great Big Sea started traveling as a band. And I just really, and honest to God, found, after I wrote, a chapter or two, the thing that interested me the most, and I enjoyed the most writing, was about what it was like to travel as a band. Because that's really where the weirdness hits the floor, right? When, before you get in a rented station wagon on Duckworth Street, and, a number of weeks later you're in Victoria, You know, that gets pretty cramped, you know, a pretty cramped situation. And so anyway, Martha is here, by the way. Martha Kenny Forstner is here. Martha, do you mind standing up? The editor of our book tonight. Thank you so much. Martha and I talked after those first kind of chapters and writing. She said, and it was, you know, we chatted about it, and I said, the thing that I'm enjoying the most is writing about what it's like to travel. I wanted to go across. I can't wait to start writing about Nova Scotia. And I think Martha said, well, why don't you write about going across the whole country? And then quickly we sort of, I suppose, jammed on this idea of what it would be like to tell the story of what it was like to travel across Canada in my early and mid-20s by the time I got there, and what Canada looked like to a fella like me who had never really been anywhere, who was from as far one side of it as you come from, literally on the edge of it, and I was joking about it. Alan lives so far east, you got to go west to get to Cape Spear. and I just thought, because of the physical sort of situation of where I live, but also because of the history of being really a first-generation Canadian, and how, you know, I and perhaps maybe arguably one generation before me were the first generation of people born in Petty Harbour that were actually Canadian and could actually grew up completely on paper Canadian. And the more I thought about it, the more I became fascinated with the notion that that must be a really strange and unique lens to see a country through. Like, first of all, I was way closer to Ireland and England and all that stuff, and all my culture. I didn't sound like anybody from here. I sounded like everybody on, you know, Coronation Street, you know, or whatever. And so I identified more with that than with this. All I knew about this was hockey, you know, and so it was just an interesting way to get started, and I became quickly kind of fascinated with the idea that I think it might make an interesting story to see what Canada looked like to a fellow like me in the early 1990s.
What you know, you come from a part of Newfoundland where, you know, the events of 1949, some people treat with a degree of ambivalence. Is that one way of putting it? Yeah, there's some.
I bet he's been practicing ambivalence since Wednesday.
I have, yeah.
Because that's not the word he wants to say.
Yeah, yes, they still feel that way a little bit. No, but you know, it was a country, and it joined another country.
That's right.
As you said, you're as far from mainland Canada just about as you can get. You know, it's not just across the bay and you can see it. It's across a whole other great huge island, and then across the water, and then you land in Cape Breton, and eventually you end up on the mainland. The kind of idea, like, were your parents who were born in a different country?
Correct, yeah.
How did they feel about Canada? How did people feel about being Canadian?
My parents were born, I say it in the book, and it's kind of the weirdest twist of you know, history, I suppose, is that my parents really were born in the 1940s, right? In towns, in a little town in Newfoundland. About 20 years later, I was born in the same town, in a small place in Newfoundland, but we're from different countries. And that's weird, right? And couple that situation with the fact that people who are old enough to vote, like people of my grandparents' generation from Petty Harbour especially, they didn't vote yes at all, right? And, you know, so my parents, I think, were a little gun-shy about the whole thing because I think they lived, like you say, they grew up at a time when Canada was very far away, and they got married way younger then, and had a family, and we were in Petty Harbour on the side of the hill, you know, and I don't think they would have had enough. They were too busy trying to keep us warm and fed, you know, and keep me in guitar strings, and so I don't think they thought about that very much, to be honest with you. I don't think it would have mattered much to them if you told them, by the way, you're a Canadian now. Oh, cool. By the way, you're from Malta now. Awesome. By the way, you're from Trinidad. Great. You know, like, it just, you know, that the day-to-day occurrences for my mom and dad in the late 1970s, early 1980s, wouldn't matter what country they were in anyway. So they didn't, I mean, it wasn't something that they talked about a lot, but my grandfather's generation did talk about it a lot. And, you know, my own grandfather did say many times to me, "Oh, so you're going up to Canada, are you?" Yep.
How about, you said, like, obviously hockey is one of the things, sports one of the things that came
Yeah.
in, but otherwise, Newfoundland, in a lot of ways, the reference points growing up would have been, the stuff you watched on TV and the music you listened to would be very much of Newfoundland in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the other kind of isolating thing that I learned when I was writing this book really was that not only is Newfoundland out on the edge of it, right? And I sounded more like I did in Coronation Street around some of the in Father Ted or something, Most of the sort of pop culture, if you will, stuff that even until I was well into my teens, was either from Newfoundland. Ron Hines, wonderful grand band, Figgy Duff, or it was Irish, it was the Clancy Brothers, Ryan's Fancy, it was the Dubliners, right? All that stuff, like that's the heroes of my dad, right? It's like we got in Great Big Sea one time, we got to open for the Clancy Brothers, and I brought Dad backstage. Holy jeez. He almost knocked me over trying to get into the door. Take a knee. So it's a unique place to start for a young fellow to come across a country that apparently I'm in, by the way. Apparently I'm part of this thing that has hockey and some really amazing place called Montreal where people get dressed up to go to the hockey and smoke while they're at the hockey. That's pretty wicked.
The idea of heading west and playing music and playing Newfoundland music it was not a well-traveled path, right?
No.
You mentioned your wonderful grand band, Ron Hines to a degree, Figgy Duff. Harry Hibbs had the Caribou Club, but he was here already, right?
That's right. This is not all vodka, by the way.
But you guys are going off, so you head out along the Trans-Canada. Thank you. We'll find out.
Just in case the questions gets a bit serious.
Could change the conversation a bit. So as you're heading west past Gander or Grand Falls or on your way to the wilds of Port aux Basques and North Sydney eventually, you're traveling a road not many people had traveled.
That's right.
There's no precedent really for you, is there?
There was almost no precedent to do what we were doing because the few bands, like our musical heroes, the Duff and Wonderful Grand Band and bands really were, when they traveled, like Figgy Duff played more in Europe than they did they went back to Ireland or back to England because that's where that folk music movement was really happening in the 1970s when they were doing so good. And then the Grand Band, were the biggest heroes in my young life, was a local television show. Like when I was 11, I didn't watch a show, first and foremost, from New York, or Hollywood, or Vancouver, or whatever. It was from St. John's. And the biggest star in the world were the guys in the Wonderful Grand Band. It was Ron Hines and Tommy Sexton and Greg Malone. And so the things that would normally drag you to the bigger cities of your country didn't really matter to me. I didn't have any of that. So, and those bands really didn't play a lot in Canada. And Newfoundland, it's funny, last night I hosted the Music NL Awards, Music Newfoundland Labrador Awards, and celebrating basically the music industry of Newfoundland and Labrador. It's 25 years old. It started the exact same year Great Big Sea started. So we didn't have, there was no music industry in Newfoundland, Now the biggest lucky thing that happened to us is that by the time we were in year 2 and 3, there was a big Celtic wave that hit where everybody was signing the Rankin family and the Barras and Ashley and Natalie and everything East Coasty was hip. But still, we didn't know how to do it. We didn't know how to get anywhere. There was no you couldn't go down the road in St. John's and ask the band who had just toured across the country successfully, how do we do that? Because no one had ever done it. And so there was so many times in the young life of Great Big Sea, both physically and otherwise, we were doing things for the very first time. Like I remember this is perhaps a boring but a very illustrative example. Like 7 or 8 years in 10 years or whatever into it, we had this accountant in St. John's, and we just got signed to a record deal in Germany and Denmark, and we had to figure out a way to successfully and efficiently transfer Danish kroner into the coffers of a Newfoundland-based entertainment company. I'm serious. And I remember he looked at me and went, "We have no." I said, "Do you know how to do that?" And he went, "No." And he said, "Trust me, this has never been a problem for anybody." And I remember that conversation going like, "Oh yeah, like this has never been a problem for anyone. Like no one's ever had to figure that out." But so, yeah, there was a very unpaved road, from a Newfoundland standpoint. Once we became sort of friends and, got lots of chums in the Ontario and even the Atlantic Canadian or the Maritime Canadian music biz, stuff became a little more clear, that, thank God for bands like Blue Rodeo and the like that took us under their wing and said, "You don't have to do that, don't rent that, just come with us over here and you'll do that," and to save you a few knocks,
Alan, what do you remember about the first road trip, the first time you guys piled into the car, got on the ferry in Port aux Basques, and landed in the garden spot that is North Sydney, Nova Scotia, your introduction to mainland Canada, like that? What were you guys thinking when you got off the boat in North Sydney? I know what I always think, but it's probably different for you.
Well, is there any children in the audience? I really wish we had a bar here now. The first time I ever did that was just me and Daryl in a car. And I tell the story, I don't want to ruin parts of the book for you, but we almost didn't make it for many reasons. But after a lifetime of dreaming of becoming a guy who played a guitar on the mainland of Canada, and trust me, if there's anyone who fantasized about it more than me, I'd like to meet them, about what that might be like to drive off the ferry onto, Cape Breton Island, leading to the mainland of the world. That to me was like, I had such an inflated notion of what that moment might be like, it's nirvana or something, And anyway, of course, the reality of it is you drive bleary-eyed through the night to get to the ferry, and then you get on the ferry and it's, 48 hours instead of 18 hours from Argentia or whatever, and everyone around you is barfing and yakety blah, and we arrive and you finally, I describe it in the book roughly as the trip across the Gulf is like a birth. It's something you saw coming for a long time, but couldn't possibly imagine how hard it would be when it finally came. And finally the doors open up on the other side, and you are born into a new world, and the light hits your eyes. And as I say, the only thing left is for some giant fella to pick you up by the ankles and smack your arse. And I remember coming off the ferry that day, just being freaked out that we'd finally made it or whatever. And the first thing you see when you get off the ferry, at that time anyway, in Nova Scotia in North Sydney was, "Welcome to Nova Scotia, lick a chick." That's the second thing you said. I'm not lying. There was this chicken store. Anybody here from Cape Breton? No, anybody know? Is it still there?
It's still there.
Yeah, see, there you go.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Lick a chick. That's what we drove past. I don't know why, but it was just like, I can remember just being solid from it, going like, and I don't know if out loud I said it, but I certainly said to myself, "Oh." Huh. So that's how it was. That's the cleanest way I can answer that.
Great. So you guys, you're going to play in bars. You're playing.
Nobody put this on the internet, for Jesus' sake.
No, it's. I'll save the Quebec story for later.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
No, you're four guys. You're going into bars where people, where bands, loud bands go and play, rock bands go and play. They're selling beer. They want people to dance. And you guys show up, and you got traditional instruments. You've got accordions and bodhráns and mandolins and. How's that go over with the bar owners in Maritime Canada when you show up?
Well, in its defense, I mean, I talk about it in the book. One of the greatest saving graces in our whole lives was making it to Nova Scotia and getting to play this place called the Lower Deck, right? And it's fabulous, everybody. And it was the perfect we were the perfect band, and that was the perfect bar for that band. Like it was literally tailor-made for us. It was like tables of people drinking beer who wanted to sing songs they knew, you know. And we're like, all right, we'll sing them till my head comes off. Fantastic, let's go. And so there was a couple of things that were tiered like that in Atlantic Canada. As we moved closer towards Ontario, and there was less kind of sort of pubs like that, and we were really, by that time too, we sort of realized that if we were going to get out of the pubs, we had to get out of the pubs, and that meant being like one of 4 bands on a rock bill, being the only band that didn't have like full drum kit and the like, and playing rock songs, and we were, you know. Oh, fancy brings a thought to me of a flower so bright and fair. And you're like, forgive me, but like, you know, dudes in Hamilton, you know.
Yeah.
In retrospect, they were kinder to us than they had to be. Yeah, that's true. But that part was, you know what, that was, by and large, that part of bringing Newfoundland music across the country wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. Because, for 2 reasons. First of all, I think Canadians, by and large, are, you know, it's an open book. And they will listen, especially if it's some other part of Canada. It's like, hey, there's some Ukrainian band from, you know, the top of such and such a place coming down. All right, go check it out. Cool, you know, or whatever. And the biggest part, of course, is that just about everywhere we went, 440 or 400 home-starved Newfoundlanders would come to every pub. And the poor guys who were like the headliners at the rock club be wondering why the opening band had, you know, 250 people there at 6:30 weeping. Yeah. Because somebody sang Lukey's Boat. Like, and they're leaving because they didn't want to hear, you know. Like, oh, sorry. We got kicked off a couple of tours. We did. Not going to say who kicked us off, but we did. And they should have kicked us off. It was like, it made total sense in retrospect for them, because it was like, who wants that? You know, this like, the concert's sold out. Great, let's go do it. The headliner goes on, and it's a third of a house. Yeah. Because all the rest of the people followed us down to the pub.
But they kind of, the Newfoundlanders abroad, they kind of seeded it for you in a lot of places,
yeah,
right? Like
everywhere.
It would start with that, and then they would bring their friends.
Yeah.
And then,
I called it the diaspora, you know? The Newfoundland Republican Army all around the country and around the world. And it was fantastic. Like, it still is. I mean, it's still one of the things that makes it easier for me and for us at the time, is like, we feel like we have this family around the country and around the world that goes, you know, the great quote is mentioned in the book from the guy who owned the Horseshoe when we sold out the Horseshoe the first time. And he said, like, you know, when a band from Red Deer plays here, all the people from Alberta don't come out to the Horseshoe at 4 o'clock. But a band from St. John's plays here, and all the Newfoundlanders. And I was like, yep. It was great, you know, and like, so that really made that part of it easier. And I tell the story in the book, and I've told it in public before. I think I'll tell it right now if you don't mind. It was about this. I began to think that I'll never play a gig anywhere in the country without someone from Newfoundland in the audience waving the flag. And thank God for him, you know. And then we got the odd gig, and it's out of the blue in the sort of the mid '90s or whatever. We got this gig in Krakow, in Poland. Anybody from Poland here? Yeah, dziękuję. Polska, dziękuję. And it was so fantastic. And it was a shanties festival, primarily sung by like men's choirs from all over different parts of Poland and I guess in the Czech Republic and Slovakia and a few places. And but then there was us. We were like 25, young fellows in shorts. You know, it looked like Pearl Jam, and all the rest of the guys had uniforms and stuff like that. Like, and we did well. And you know, and it was like, I remember at the end of the night, like, they gave out trophies to the bands, you know, and the like, right? And we won 3 or 4 of the trophies, you know, like, you know, whatever it was, you know, the best band or whoever came from the furthest or. I mean, it was in Polish. I didn't know it was Polish. And dziękuję, that's all I could say. And so we're backstage after, and like in this big basketball hall or whatever, and there's a few hundred people, and everyone's kind of lined up, kind of shaking their hands, and Dobrze muzyka, how am I doing? Dobra muzyka, what? Dobrze. Right? I know some other words too, which I'll tell you about later on. And music is fantastic, and the energy. Dobrze muzyka. This one guy, he didn't even come all the way in. He just sort of leaned around. And he went, "That was deadly, boys." Honest to God. I see him doing that, and I was like, I said, "Come here." And he said, "No, you're good." I was like, "Come here." I said, "What are you doing, man?" He said, "Oh, well, geez." I said, "Where are you from?" "From the Brow." If you know St. John's, the Brow is Shea Heights, right? "From the Brow, boy." And I said, "What are you doing over here?" He said, "Bob, we were backpacking down in Slovakia. Heard the boys were playing. You know, so we had to come up." And I was like, and I said, "Do you want a beer or something?" No. We got a few girls out there. Go, "See you later on." Gone. Never saw him again. What I wouldn't give to meet him now, I tell you right now. Anybody knows everybody on Shea Heights, see if you can find someone who was backpacking in Slovakia around 1996.
I want to ask you about the Canada Day show in Ottawa, because it's in the book and it's a great story. Because they have the big Canada Day concert on Parliament Hill. You guys are booked to play it. It's relatively early days for the band, but it's a big deal, right? And it's a national showcase, national TV, and you tell the story because it's a good story.
We got booked to play Canada Day in 1997, and the band had just got signed to Warner Music Canada. We were starting to get on Much Music. It was Newfoundland's sort of come home year, 500 year from 1497 to 1997 kind of thing. So it was a big year, and we got added to the bill, and the Queen was going to be there, and it was basically this was basically 3 songs live on international television. This was a big deal, and it was a big deal for us, but I think, in all honesty, I think it was a big deal for the province to have us, and they sent up a young group of dancers to dance with us and stuff. It was a big deal. And it was a big gig. And we've been rolling along, for 3 or 4 years, and this was it was hitting steam in a big way. And so we got this gig, and we're like, this is it. This is the one. I've been joking about it ever since. I say before we go on stage every night, this is our big break. And and to make a long story short, we got there, and I remember so excited because the stage is so big and it's so awesome. And we ran up on the side of the stage, and a guy was reading the pre-written introductions for the bands, and it was all, cool introduction for a lady from Quebec and a cool introduction for a band from Ontario. And then he tells a Newfie joke about crabs crawling up the beach. And I just remember being there on the side of the stage going, "What?" And he repeated it, and he said, that's the way Newfies talks with crabs on the beach. And I was like, "That's our introduction." And he said, "Yeah, don't worry though. We have this dory over here. You're going to pull you guys out. We have these yellow sou'wester hats on." I was like, and I was from Petty Harbor. I was like, "Why would we wear sou'wester hats? It's not even raining. Why would we do that?" And to make a long story, I was like, "Dude, I don't think we should. That's not cool, And he said, "Well, no, it's a joke." And I was like, "I know. And are the rest of them all jokes?" "No, but you guys, us guys what?" And over the next half hour or so, we got in the most trouble that I think I've ever gotten in my whole life, because we were a bunch of insolent little pricks that showed up here, got this big gig, and now we're telling us how to write the intros for the band. I was like, and I remember my come-to moment was in the dressing room trailer with this person. It was just like, she said, "Well, so you don't want us," this dude said, "you don't want us to say to introduce you guys with crabs. And I said, tell you what, no, I don't. But I said, I'll tell you what, if you think it's really cool, you introduce the French band as frogs, and you can introduce us as crabs. That's totally fine. He almost punched me in the neck. I'm not joking. I thought I was physically in danger. And it was like, what did you say? And I was like, you heard what I said, man. It's like, tell me what the difference is, And over the next couple of hours and day, we had this huge internal debate, even amongst the band. And luckily for me, I had the guidance of Bob Hallett, Sean McCann, and Darryl Power, because they were a bit older than me, and they were worldlier than me, and ultimately smarter than me. And because part of me in my heart and soul just wanted the gig. I wanted that gig so bad. And I wanted it to go well, and I wanted everyone there to fucking love us. And I wasn't too fussy on what I had to do to make them love us. And like I confessed to in the book, I think that if I had been there on my own, I don't know if I would have stood my ground as much as the boys insisted upon and convinced me ultimately to do. And so collectively, that was where we really dug our heels in the first time and said, look, for better or for worse, we might be the first things people ever learn or hear about Newfoundland. And that's a responsibility that we're not taking lightly. All right, so there's nothing going on our posters or in our introductions that everybody in Newfoundland doesn't like. So we dug our heels in and we thought we had it all done. And then, in the weirdest moment of the day, we thought we had it all done. Okay, the introduction's gonna be this. There's no Dory, there's no nothing. A person who worked in protocol. Do you know what I'm talking about? When I say protocol, I didn't either, don't feel bad. This is a person who usually would travel around with a dignitary or whatever, and and say, my job is to make sure that, you introduce, His Honorable Brunt as, Bishop Brunt or something.
Yeah, Bishop, that'd be good. I like that.
Make sure you got the right clothes on for Bishop Brunt or whatever, and the like. And because the Queen was there, they had gone through all the lyrics of all the songs that we were to play. I'm serious. I mean, you couldn't make it up if you told. And this gent, finely dressed, approached me and said, "Are you Alan from the Great Big Sea?" And I was like, "Yes, I am, yeah." He said, "Can I speak to you about one of your songs?" "Sure." He said, "One of the lyrics you have in one of the songs is inappropriate for a royal company." Yeah. Just one? Jeez, you should read them all. Clearly you don't know what they mean. But anyway, he goes and says, "Well, no, we have Her Majesty here. I don't think you should say, Auntie Mary has a canary up the leg of her drawers." And I said, this day couldn't possibly get more surreal. And he said, "Do you mind changing it to pantyhose?" And I was like, dude, you don't expect me to get up there tomorrow and say, Auntie Mary, now a 500-year-old Newfoundland folk song. I'm going to go up there now and say, Auntie Mary got a canary up the leg of her pantyhose. And get on an airplane the next day and fly back to St. John's. I said, you're going to have to put me in the witness protection program. Jesus. You've been there. What kind of shit knocking would I have got? That's the only way to describe it.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah.
That one was easy. I said, dude, we can't do it. And I said, "Oh, if you want," he said, "well, we'll have to switch the song." I said, "Look, I'd be happy to switch the song, but there's a bunch of kids they've flown up to dance with us, and they've been dancing to that song, And anyway, through the jigs and the reels, I said, "Look, it's up to you guys. You can mute my microphone if you want on the day, but I'm not changing the lyrics to it. You can kick us off the show, and I'll be happy to tell everybody why I kicked us off the show." But it was also, if you go YouTube, look it up when you go home. Go YouTube, like Canada Day, Great Big Sea or whatever, Auntie Mary. And there's a point in the song, and this is the next day now after all this stuff where we're playing away, right? And the St. Pat's dancers are dancing. It's beautiful. It's cool, right? And And, you know, finally get to the lyric, and just like the Stones on Ed Sullivan or something. It's like, bearing down, I'm doing it. This is my great act of rebellion. Fuck it, I'm going to say drawers. I'm doing it. And so anyway, the first comment, I say drawers, and me and Daryl look at each other. You look it up, you'll see it.
It's punk rock, very punk. That's awesome. Now, we've got, there are many great on the road stories in this book. I'm not sure. I think we probably got time for one good one. And now
that's what my mother says. If you're having a little song session home or something like that, and you're playing a bunch of songs or something that I guess Mom might not be fussy about, then you finally sing one, and she comes over after now and half. Now, honey, now that's a good song.
Which one do you want to do? You know, I like the airplane stories. You know, there's the Easter cream eggs, which has changed my relationship to candy forever. And and there's the Quebec one, but that'll get you in trouble again. I'm not sure we can do that one.
I'd be happy to tell the Quebec one, but there's no way to do it without swearing in a way.
You want me to set it up? You want to do that one?
Well,
what would you rather do?
We'll do the Quebec one because it's very quick.
Okay. So generally, you know, Great Big Sea, and, you know, as your travels across the country of Canada, you were welcomed with open arms eventually into every province in this country,
Correct.
pretty much, except one, to a degree, right? One was more challenging. Is that fair?
Well, you know, I go on to talk about it in the Quebec chapter about how difficult it is for English-speaking bands to play
general, it's not just
across,
you specifically.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't us specifically, but in this case, it was us specifically. So forgive me. I tried to figure out a way to do this in public. And you're kind of the guinea pigs of an experiment here. So I apologize to you all right now.
Don't walk out, please. Yeah.
But there is no way to tell this story without swearing in the worst kind of way, which I won't do, because I have invented, I think, a way, and this is my experiment here tonight, to tell this story without swearing in a horrible way. So, imagine just for a moment, for whatever reason, some twist of fate, that once or twice a sentence in this next story, one of the words that we will say, the first letter of said word, for some reason has been dropped back just by one letter. And so, the word, this horrible curse word that's in this story, will sound to you, as I tell it to you right now, as the act of a baseball player who, instead of swinging away, goes like this.
No.
He bunts. How do we feel? Are we feeling okay?
Everybody going to be all right with this?
I don't have to continue if you don't want me to. And again, this is an experiment. So, let's just get comfortable with it, and the story will be better, okay? Bunts. So we were at an after party after the Festival d'été in Quebec City, and we've been led to this very separatist bar, because that's where the folk singing's going on, so that's where we're going. And me and Sean from the band follow the ringleaders of the mall, and we go there, and it was like we get up and sang a couple of Newfoundland French songs, you know, that we knew, and you know, we're part of the evening in the Quebec, and it was so awesome. Like, it was just great, and I was sat sort of at this table this way, kind of chatting to someone here with his bottle of Saint-Gant that was about that big, and you know, it's tapping away, and it's like, you know, about the songs, and I hear the conversation, because Sean's back is to mine. He's talking to some fellow over there, and it's like I can hear this just slightly voices rising or whatever, and this French voice, and forgive my bad attempt at a French accent, was, "You Newfoundlander are a bunch of bunt. You are bunt, and all your friend are bunt." And I'm like, excuse me. What the? And I'm here. And as this got been going on, as I explained in the book, the history of Newfoundland-Quebec relations has never been awesome, But of course, it was punctuated and made especially worse, I mean, there had been like the big Labrador boundary issue, like who got the boundary of what Labrador, and then, there was and then there's the huge debacle of what we in Newfoundland know as Churchill Falls, right, where the Quebec government and the Newfoundland government partnered on this hydroelectric development in Labrador, but the Newfoundland negotiators of the deal forgot to include the whole notion of inflation. So right now, and for like 50 odd years, the Quebec government has been buying, power, and producing power for basically at 1960s prices in 2020. So, and it's been a great, without that. So anyway, but only very recently, if you remember in history, there was the big Meech Lake Accord, right? And the person who stood up and stopped the Meech Lake Accord was our premier, right? And so this was going to be a big thing for Quebec, and we shagged it up. And so anyway, and then we went playing a gig at the Festival d'été. And I sat talking to someone with a tall Sankon, and somebody behind me said, "You Newfoundlander are a bunch of bunt. You are a bunt. All your friends are bunt." That's when I turned around. Yeah. And Sean and he were engaged in this conversation, and it was just and he explained, you come here and you sing your song from Terre-Neuve, and you come and yet, you fuck us. And we were like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? He said, you know, with the Meech Lake, you fuck us. And Sean, thank God, cool as a cucumber as ever, Sean goes, yeah. But you fucked us with Churchill Falls. And Buddy goes, what? And Sean repeated, and he goes, oh, Churchill Falls. That was a good one. No, like that. So the rest of the night went very surprisingly well. Now, I will ask you to pass comment when we're signing later on, if I can successfully tell that story in public with the bunt gag.
At a library.
At a library. Because as you heard, you can't really tell it.
No, it's not.
I can't say, you guy are a bunch of jerk. It wouldn't work. Do you know what I mean? It's not the same. Anyway.
Oh, we're being waved at. I was going to try and kind of
reel it
go
back.
to the cream eggs and kind of maybe mellow things up. But we're going to do Q&A now. Is that right? Yeah. So if anybody has a question for Mr. Doyle, there's a microphone in the center, and we will do it in an orderly fashion. Correct?
Or disorderly, it's fine with me. I mean, I've literally just sworn like a sailor at a public library in Toronto. So.
Yeah, I feel guilty not taking you down that road. I'm sorry about that.
No, I think, you know what?
I gave you choices,
It needed to be tested, and I'm grateful to get a chance to do it. Yeah, come ahead. Thank you. How are we doing?
Hi, Alan. I follow you on Twitter and social.
Thank you.
And often you'll post outrageously early alarm clock shots. So I want to know when you're on tour, what is the least amount of sleep you need to function?
Oh, so I'll let you know. I hosted the Music NL Awards last night, and my flight this morning was 6 o'clock. So. You know what? It's more than thank you for the question, by the way. It's more than it used to be. I've always been kind of blessed, and my sort of joke has always been, when it comes to sleep, for me, it's anywhere between 4 and 14 is fine. Because I'm blessed to be able to sleep anywhere, especially in any kind of a moving vehicle of any kind. And the band always joked that, Alan can get 8 minutes sleep in a 10-minute cab ride. And so, but I'm finding it a bit harder as I get a bit older, to tell you the truth. But, I can't really function on less than 3 hours sleep very well. But I can function on 4.5 or 5 hours sleep quite well, unless functioning means singing in the morning. That's a that's a different ball game altogether. That's too tough. So.
And you walked away from a great party last night, correct? In order to get that
I did it for you.
Precious 3 hours of sleep.
I did it for you. Picture it, I was the host of the Music NL Awards, so all the Newfoundland bands are there, all my buddies, it was awesome. And so it finished at 11:30 or 11 o'clock or something like that. And I was on one side of the stage over here, and over on the other side is the green room. And everyone's in there. And I can't really hear, but I can just see. And it's like one of those things, you know it's going well because you can look in and you can see like 10 or 12 heads through the door, and they're all talking. Nobody's listening. And it's like, but anyway, so is he coming over to say hello? I was like, there's no going through the crack on that door and coming out before 3:30. I'm telling you right now. There's like a time vacuum in there. So I walked out the side door and went home and went to bed because I said, I got to meet the people at the Toronto Public Library tomorrow night. And I have to stand in front of them and mock swear. You guys will never be able to watch a baseball game again. In this now. Looks like he's going to bunt. I just realized this now. I've wrecked
baseball.
I've wrecked the October playoff run for so many people. Sorry, go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you so much for being here tonight. In your first book, you spoke about your time working for the Newfoundland Museum.
Yep.
And through your stories and what have you, you talk with such a passion and enthusiasm for heritage and history. Do you get a chance to visit many local museums throughout your tours when you're across Canada?
Yeah.
Or is the complete whirling dervish that is tour, does it keep it away from?
No, I'm a bit of a travel nerd still, and like I still, and all the guys in Great Big Sea were like it too. Like we always wanted the travel part of it to be a bonus and not a hardship, and. Like Bob and Sean, all the guys were like we always tried to get to the next town, even before we had tour buses, as early as we could, so we could be in that town. I didn't want to get, and I still don't like arriving in a town, getting off the bus and getting on stage and playing a gig, for a few reasons. The obvious one is that I want to see what's going on, and even like in honest to God, like kind of a show business kind of way, because it gives me something to talk about. That's unique, because I love that when I go watch a guy and said, hey, I was in Chess's this morning, and I said blah, 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 or whatever, and so I like that way, but then in particular, I do like going to museums. I'm a bit of a museum buff, to be honest with you, because I worked in one for so long. Imagine me, and people say, what would you be doing if you weren't, working in the planet? It was like, well, I had a job at the Newfoundland Museum, which meant I got to talk at people for a living about Newfoundland. It's nirvana for me. It's just like, following people around. The poor people are tortured trying to read the exhibitions. And I'm like, and then. And I loved it, and there's a bunch of good ones here. Although, you know what, I haven't been to I guess it's at the ROM since like the last few months when they got the big whale thing that they took from Newfoundland.
Yeah, the Trout River whale.
Have you ever seen that?
It was across the road from my
Yeah,
house there.
that's
where
right.
That's where they.
That's your whale.
That's my whale.
That's your goddamn whale.
Yes.
I haven't seen that yet, but that'd be cool. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
What's that? AGO? Oh, yeah? The whale's gone. God damn it. I would like to take it, yeah. I do like going to, tell you what I like doing too, is going to, I do like going to art galleries. Like, I don't, not to see like Johnny Famous paintings necessarily, but to see like people here paint. You know what I mean? And just, not because I can paint or anything, it's like, but just because I find that's a cool, there's two things I like to do on the road that I think would surprise people. One of them is to go to art galleries and museums. And the other one, I don't know if I ever told you this, but one of my little secret things to do is I lie in my bunk, especially since I got my phone, and even then, before that, I had a transistor radio, and I would listen to local talk radio. Because you can find out everything that's going on.
It's true, yeah.
Listen to the morning show riding into Saskatoon in the middle of the winter, and they're worried about the corn freezing or something or whatever, You're like, that's cool. Like, it is, I love doing that stuff, so. I think it's all part of still being fascinated with traveling and wanting to actually get somewhere, you know, not just to the back door of the theater and back in the bus. It's such a shame. Hello, how are you?
Oh, good. How are you?
I'm awesome.
Thank you for doing this.
What's your
This
name?
is a lot of fun. I'm Katie.
Hi, Katie.
And so I have a
all right.
two-part question.
Go ahead.
Number one, could you please tell us the cream egg story?
Yes.
And number two, don't you think it would be super fun if you sang us a little song?
Sure. Sure. Let me get, Sam, can I borrow, who's got a book? Can I borrow a book? You got one? Can I borrow a book? Thank you. Am I allowed to read a little bit? Is that all right? Just give me 2 secs. Because I read this the other day and I thought it was cool. Let's hear. What a
Yeah,
dick.
it's one way to put. Yeah, it's disgusting, but it's cool. Yeah, yeah,
Fred's right now. It's in the Manitoba bit.
yeah.
Where's that now? 1 second. I gotta find me provinces here. Fort Mac. Not that far.
Martha, you know where this is? You know, you got a page.
Here
You
it
got a
is, yeah.
page reference over there.
Here it comes. No, I'm gonna get it. Don't worry. It's gonna be wicked. Got it right here. So I'll read this little bit. Is that okay? So it's in Manitoba. This is just a couple of minutes when I get to read it, but I'll set it up for you. In Manitoba, the chapter kind of opens, and one of my first memories, the first time we ever played in Winnipeg, was during a brutal snowstorm. And we were driving, I think, for whatever reason, back to Winnipeg. We'd played somewhere west of Winnipeg, and we were driving back into Winnipeg. And I remember from Portage La Prairie back to Winnipeg was just like everybody off the roads, and it was a terrible snowstorm, and our van was like the only thing going. And so bad it was that we actually picked up a fella, some poor fella, and we were on like day 51 or something of this tour, and we had. It was a bizarre scene when the door opened, the poor bastard. He had like a suit on, you know, he was like some normal working salesman or something. And he, finally got saved from the snowstorm. His car had gone off the road or whatever, to open the slide door of this van, and this puff of smoke comes out or whatever. And what meets him is we had this van, and I don't know why this was, but there was something going on in Ontario. We had rented this van in Ontario a few weeks before, and for whatever insurance thing was happening at the time or something, you couldn't take the back seat out of a 15-passenger van, which we always did to put our stuff in, but they wouldn't let us. Can't take that one out, it's insurance, because you might put cargo back there or something. Oh, you can take out any other one you want. Okay? So we took out the one right behind the 2 driver's seats, right? So that we'd lay stuff there, and I figured, geez, that's a big flat part now. So I went to an Army, and we only had a few seats left, so I said, I'll sit there. Let's go to the Army Navy store and buy a blow-up mattress, which we did. And about 18 hours after, a hole came in it. But I had volunteered stupidly, so I sat on the floor of this van. So I was sat there when the door opened. Imagine what I look like now, 50-odd days into this tour. I was kind of, and this poor guy, and what greets him is all this bizarreness of, dirty fellows and smoke and the like. And you'll read the chapter, you'll get it. But the most thing that strikes him odd is that the place is basically shrouded in Easter cream egg wrappers. Something bad has happened, and they're everywhere. And I say, he's right to wonder. About 3 weeks previous, we had played a gig at one of the early GBS haunts in Toronto. After the show, I had a few drinks with an old pal who'd recently scored a job as an Ontario region sales representative for the Cadbury Company. Dale asked if we'd like some snacks for the road, and I said, sure. Didn't think much more of it. We were all set to drive off the next morning when the hotel clerk knocked on the van window and asked if I was Mr. Doyle. I nodded, and she pointed back to a cardboard box roughly the size of a goalie's hockey bag sitting in the middle of the lobby. That's for you. A delivery truck from Cadbury dropped it off early this morning. It was too heavy to lift. So I pushed it across the lobby floor. I tipped it up onto one side of the van and dropped it on the air mattress, and we sped off. What's in it? The boys asked before we were even out of the parking lot. We were as excited as kids at Christmas morning. I busted open the box. Some Easter cream eggs. I kept digging and digging, expecting a variety pack of sorts. And some more Easter cream eggs. What else? Bob twisted around in the front passenger seat to see. It appears, gents, that my pal Dale at Cadbury has given us a box of boxes of Easter cream eggs. When the final tally was done, there were 12 boxes of 24 eggs. So 5 fellas in a rental van with a missing bench, with a missing bench seat and a leaky air mattress spread over guitar cases, left Toronto bound for a near month-long tour to Victoria and back with almost 300 Easter cream eggs. Like many romances, my relationship with those eggs got off to a promising start. I was enamored. I could not believe my luck. The perks of being in a band were finally rolling in. I had my first sample with the CN Tower still in plain sight in the rearview mirror. Sweet, salty chocolate with a tangy, creamy inside. Delicious. I had another one before we hit Hamilton about an hour later. I ate a third one late that night after the gig in Guelph, I believe. As I settled into the hotel bed for a good night's sleep, I reflected on what I had put in my body that day. 3 large coffees, 3 small bottles of water, 3 cans of beer, 1 foot-long sub, and 3 Easter cream eggs. The next day, I ate 1 more. Sorry, the next day I ate 2 more. On day 3, I figured I would not eat any at all. But the drive from Sudbury to Sault Ste. Marie is a long one. And with the hunger and the boredom setting in, the egg started calling me, seducing me with its curves and sweetness. Just the tip, I said to the egg. And it nodded back to me, I'm certain. But the next thing I knew, there was another wrapper on the floor and the egg was gone. The slippery slope had tipped hard and I didn't even know it was on it. A few days later, I hated myself every time I looked at the box. Every morning I swore, I will not be tempted by one of those sirens today. No friggin' way, I'm better than that. But the drive from Thunder Bay to Winnipeg is a long one. It was like the Lord of the Rings. And the egg was the one ring to rule them all. I started as Frodo, but I was quickly becoming Gollum. I may have even whispered, my precious, as I surrendered to the egg over and over again.
How are we doing time-wise?
Oh my God. Oh no. Oh frig. I just realized I dropped the book off to Mom's before I got on the plane. She's going to read just the tip. Now, Alan, honey, I don't think that's a very good thing to have. What was the other question? I'm sorry, I can't remember. Oh, a song, yeah, so of course, yeah. That's easy. Song. I'll sing a song. Should we sing a song and then we'll do the, if people want to sign books?
Yeah, you got a lot of books to sign. You want
Okay. Excursion Around the Bay, is that a good one? You want to do that one?
You want to do it with the mic on, or you want to?
Oh, I'll just do it here. It's all good.
Okay.
Well, I'll do it together. I got to stand up, sing that one. So this is an easy one because we can all sing it together. And this is actually a good one topically because one of the things I talk about in the earliest part of the book is I talk about the various skill sets that the other guys in the band had. And, Sean was an incredible, singer and bowround player and writer, but he was also an incredibly gifted salesman and deal maker and the like. And Bob, of course, was a brilliant musician, but also was incredibly gifted as a bookkeeper and a publicist and the like. And I was fun at parties, and we had nothing. And of course, Daryl's big thing was Daryl knew every song written from 1840 to 1972, and also had the best attitude of, like, whenever there was a long drive or something like that, Daryl could inject humor into the worst, most desperate situations and make everybody laugh. So Daryl would sing us to sleep as we were driving, from Gander back to St. John's or whatever. And I think the first time I ever heard this song in person, Daryl sang it in the van, because he used to sing it all the time in Rankin Street, and then we started doing it. So it's the song, he always sang these funny songs where somebody died or something like that. It was like, in a way that only Newfoundland songs can do. But you can sing, if you know this, when you sing it with, because your part goes like this. You just sing, oh me, oh my, right? So you go, oh me, oh my, I heard me old one cry. Well, I think I'm gonna die, and then, oh, I heard me old one say then, I wish I'd never taken this excursion around the bay. That's right. Thank you very much. It was on last Monday morning, and the day been calm and fine, to the Harbour Grace excursion with the boys to have a time. And just before the sailor took the gangway from the pier, I saw some fella haul me wife on board of the Volunteer. Come on. Oh me, oh my, well, I heard me old one cry. Oh me, oh my, I think I'm gonna die. And then I heard me old one say, I wish I had never taken this excursion around the bay. We had full 300 souls aboard. Oh, what a splendid sight. Matt strong and regimental to make our spirits bright, and myself being in the double. For the funny things they'd say, they'd choke themselves from laughing when they'd see us in the bay. Come on, oh me, oh my, I heard me old one cry. Oh me, oh my, I think I'm gonna die. Oh me, oh my, I heard me old one say, I wish I'd never taken this excursion around the bay. My wife, she got no better. Oh, she turned a sickly green. I fed her cake and candy, fat pork and kerosene. It's just now occurring to me. Jesus Christ. Fat pork and kerosene, castor oil and sugar of candy. I rubbed tear oil on her face. Holy Jesus. And I said, you'll be a dandy when we reach this Harbour Grace. Go on, oh me, oh my, I heard me old one cry. Oh me, oh my, I think I'm gonna die. Oh me, oh my, I heard me old one say, I wish I'd never taken this excursion around the bay. And then she died below, I suppose she did. And then she died below the brandies as we were coming back. And we buried her in the ocean, wrapped up in a Union Jack. So now I am a single man. Holy shit. This is a murderous kind of song. And so, Daryl Power, and so now I am a single man in search of a pretty face. And the woman that says she'll have me, well, we're off for Harbour Grace. Come on. Oh me, oh my, I heard me old one cry. Oh me, oh my, I think I'm gonna die. Oh me, oh my, I heard me old one say, I wish I had never taken this. And one more time, go on, oh me, oh my, I heard me old one cry. Oh me, oh my, I think I'm gonna die. And oh me, oh my, I heard me old one say, I wish I had never taken this excursion around the bay. Thank you very much for tonight, everybody. Thank you. Make some noise for Stephen Brunt.
Alan Doyle.
Thank you so much.
That's
Thank
good.
you.
You got through it.